Very good evening to each one of you. On behalf of the Bangalore Chamber of Industry Commerce, we welcome each one of you to this webinar on tax assessment and litigation. Will virtual hearing resolve the matter or raise fresh concern? In time like this, we need to stay connected and stay positive. This session is being organized under the aegis of Indirect Tax Expert Committee of BCIC. We would like to specially thank Mr. G. Shivadas, Chair and Senior Advocate, Mr. B. Badrinath, Co-Chair and Mentor SDU, and Mr. P.V. Srinivasan, Mentor, Indirect Tax Expert Committee BCIC, and Advisor Wipro Limited. And also for curating this session for the benefit of our members at this crucial period. Today's speakers for the session are Mr. B.R. Bhaskaran, Accountant Member, Income Tax Appellate Tribunal. Mr. G. Shivadas, Chair, Indirect Tax Expert Committee of BCIC and Senior Advocate. Mr. P.V. Srinivasan, Mentor, Indirect Tax Expert Committee of BCIC and Advisor Wipro Limited. And Mr. H. Padamchand Kincha, Partner HC Kincha & Co. Mr. Badrinath, Co-Chair, Indirect Tax Expert Committee of BCIC and Partner SDU will set the context and moderate the session today. On behalf of the Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, we express our sincere thanks to Mr. Bhaskaran and Mr. Padamchand Kinja for accepting our invitation to address at this important. We also like to thank all the participants for joining for today's sessions. We also would like to acknowledge and thank Wipro Limited for being supporting partner for today's session. Thanks to Bala sir. We request all the participants to kindly mute your mic and webcam options. This is to enhance and keep the bandwidth strong, as well as avoid any disturbance in the background. Please post your questions in the chat box only. Also be viewing the chat box for any specific instruction given by the organizer from time to time. The speakers will respond to the questions during the session, and in case time do not permit, we shall be sharing the queries to the speakers and shall revert back to you accordingly. Kindly note the organizers will be disconnecting those participants who switch on their mic or webcam despite of our frequent request. May I now invite Mr. Badrinath to set the context and moderate for today's session. So, thanking you once again to all. Over to you, Badri sir.
Thank you. Thank you. A small correction. By and the BCI. A very big hello and a welcome to all the participants, all the panelists on this webinar. As we are aware, lockdowns and tensions have kind of pushed us for time now. So, discussing this, which trend courts.
Badri, we are not able to hear you, Badri. I'm not able to hear you, Badri.
Okay. There was some disturbance from the background. Sorry for that.
Okay. Yeah.
Trend in the tribunals and the courts. So the questions that really arise before we get on to speaking to our panelists and hearing from them will be something like, will this be the new normal? We'll hear it from our panelists saying, is this their recommendation? Will this kind of stand the test of law? Or is there any changes that we need to go through to make sure that this will have the appropriate blessings before we kind of, from a legal perspective? Should this, while preferences maybe whatever it is, we'll also hear it from our panelists to understand what the reasons are and why, if at all, should be their choice. The structure of this webinar, today's discussion is around 300. What we do over the 2 parts.
Badri, I lost you again.
Badri,
you're getting lost. Badri, you're getting lost.
Badri, can you come close to the mic?
Yeah, I am. Yeah. Okay. So what we'll go through in the next 90 minutes will be to hear from our panelists on their experiences, their learnings, their suggestions and advice to us in terms of do's and don'ts and a lot. We really have a galaxy of stars today in this panel. I'm not using words, I'm not exaggerating anything. Galaxy of and
No,
Mr.
you lost you again,
Shivdas.
Badri. There is a
Badri, not audible, Badri.
not audible, Badri. We have lost you significantly. You lost you for significant portion of that.
Now, sir? Is it, am I audible now?
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
some
but-
disturbance, Badri.
Okay, that is, I think somebody else is not on mute, sir. Somewhere it is there. Can you just check who's not on mute and maybe request? As I was telling, we had a galaxy of stars today in our panel. We are,
No, Badri. We have lost you
so
again.
there is somewhere. So there is some disturbance coming from somewhere.
I don't know, but we have lost you significantly.
Otherwise, can we
Okay.
request Shivdas sir to start, sir, moderating? And Badri
No,
can
that-
log out and come back again.
No, let's try Badri again.
Am I audible? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
try Badri.
So we have Mr. Kanchan Kinka, Mr. PVS, and Mr. Shivdas. Mr. Bhaskar is the accounting member of Income Tax Appeal Tribunal, Bangalore. He was earlier at the bench, now at Bangalore. He has practiced as a chairperson from Madurai for very.
No, we lost you again. Lost you again, Badri.
One second, sir. Okay, I'll just maybe change the network. Is it better now?
It's
We
better
need
now.
to have you for some. Yeah, we need to have you for some time. Then understand how is it going.
Okay, sir. So, Mr. Bhaskaran, I was mentioning to you, he is a member of accounting member.
Problems in there.
Shivdas sir, you can carry on, and if Badri joins, let him take it over at that point in time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Badri, you have joined, or should I take over and you'll join later?
Shivdas sir, he could take over and he can join later, sir. He is logged out.
Sir, are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, sir. Okay, so yes, and we have Mr. Kanchan Kinka as he's called. So thank you, sir. Thank you so much for making it today to this webinar. And we have Mr. PVS. He is our member for the Indirect Taxes Committee. Thanks, sir. And Mr. Shivdas, the chairman of the Indirect Taxes Committee. Thank you. Thanks to all of you for being here. The format, as I told you, is first we'll hear it out from the panelists. So let me not take away too much of time. We are already behind. So, sir, may I request Mr. Bhaskaran to share his comments as from a keynote address, keynote comments for today's discussion. Sir, Bhaskaran, sir, you're on mute, sir.
So you'll have to unmute, sir. You'll have to unmute. You'll have to unmute.
Yes, it's now audible.
Right, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Respected office bearers of Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, respected speakers of the day, Sri G. Shivdas, Senior Advocate and Chairman, Indirect Taxes Committee, Sri P. V. Srinivasan, Mentor, Indirect Taxes Committee, Sri H. Padamchand Kincha, Chartered Accountant and Luminary in Income Tax, respected participants of the webinar, a warm good evening to all. Today, we have gathered to brainstorm on the topic, will virtual hearings resolve the matter or raise fresh concerns? My understanding of the topic is that whether the virtual hearing can effectively replace physical hearing or whether the virtual hearing shall be as effective as physical hearings. By virtual hearing, we mean meeting through video conferencing technology. COVID and the consequential lockdown have brought down world economy to its lowest levels, affecting earnings of all. Hence, since the days of eruption of the present COVID pandemic, our government, industry, businessmen, and public are innovating or trying to find ways and means to move ahead in their respective activities in order to keep their activities going. We all know that everyone's survival is dependent upon their earnings. So is the case with the government too. Taxes being the sole revenue of the government, it is imperative for the government also to keep its business going and its various departments functioning so that it could generate revenues by way of taxes for carrying out social and economic development of the people and country. In the central government has started functioning of all departments since April 20 onwards. With regard to collection of taxes, which is the main source of revenue for the government, the tax tribunal assumes an important role. The tax tribunals resolve almost 90% of the tax disputes, meaning thereby a finality is reached between the tax department and taxpayers as to the quantum of tax that should be collected from an assessee. In this process, the functioning of tax tribunals has assumed greater importance. Not only tax tribunals, the functioning of all courts is found to be imperative by all courts. Hence, when National Company Law Tribunal suspended its operation, the Honorable Supreme Court has directed it to commence virtual hearing of the cases. All the courts and tribunals have already started virtual hearing. There should not be any dispute that virtual hearings are no match to physical hearings as on today. In fact, all over the country, professionals prefer physical hearings only. When Justice Bhanumati retired from Supreme Court, one of the senior advocates, while giving felicitation address, insisted on resumption of physical hearing in Supreme Court. However, subsequently, the Supreme Court has expressed its intention not to resume physical hearing during this pandemic period. We, in our Income Tax Appellate Tribunal Bangalore benches, commenced a physical hearing in the month of June with adequate precautions when Unlock 1 was announced. At that point of time, COVID situation was under control in Bengaluru as only few cases were reported. When the number of inspections started increasing in Bengaluru, then concerns were raised about physical hearings. Further, most of the advocates, chartered accountants, commissioner of income tax are aged 55 years and above, and hence their visit to ITAT was also considered to be a risky affair for their health. Under these circumstances, our Bangalore benches have also shifted to virtual hearing from 1st July onwards. Before we do our brainstorming exercise, it is essential to understand the arrangements made for smooth conducting of virtual hearing at our ITAT. This will help the participants to understand the system and to make their valuable contribution to improve the smooth functioning of virtual court hearings. Our Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, Bangalore benches, has devised a standard operating procedure and it has been circulated to all the stakeholders. Important points of SOP are that, first, in order to participate in virtual hearing, there should be a computer system or smartphone or tablet with uninterrupted power supply, video camera, microphones or speakers. 2. The representative should sit in such a manner that there is adequate lighting and proper acoustics. They should also ensure that there is no disturbance by way of background noise from any source. Further, they should join the virtual court hearing through one device only. 3. If a smartphone is used, then the stakeholders should ensure that there is no interruption of virtual court proceedings due to incoming calls. 4. Bandwidth signal strength is the key for a seamless virtual court hearing. Hence, the stakeholders should ensure that there is robust bandwidth and connectivity available at their end. 5th, the stakeholders are required to enter appearance in proper dress or attire prescribed for or befitting the dignity and majesty of judicial proceedings. The ITAT has also prescribed protocols to be observed during the hearing in virtual courtroom. First, on entering the virtual courtroom, the authorized representative, department representative or assessee in person shall ensure that the microphone of the system is kept in mute mode. This is to ensure that there is no disturbance when a party is making his submission and his voice is audible to the bench and the other party. The mobile phone should be kept in silence mode or switched off during the course of proceedings. There should be no crosstalk between the representatives during the course of proceedings. Now, I shall briefly address upon the arrangements made at the ITAT level. The registry, with due consultation of our Vice President, shall first finalize the cases to be listed out for hearing on a particular day before each of the benches. The cost list is published well in advance. As of now, we are publishing 1 month cost list in advance. The Bangalore benches of ITAT is using Cisco WebEx meeting platform for conducting this virtual court hearing. So on the date of hearing, an invitation link and meeting ID is shared with the council's public assessees in the given email ID. If the phone number is available, then the link is shared by SMS before the scheduled hearing. We have requested not to share the link to any other device or person. In Bengaluru, members are sitting on the dais of the bench only so that councils will get the feel of arguing before the bench. In some places, members are hearing the cases from their respective locations. As in the case of physical hearings, we first complete requests for adjournments. Thereafter, the remaining cases are called one by one by the bench clerk. The bench clerk shall unmute the mic of the counsels of the case being called upon. The mics of all other participants are muted. Thereafter, the hearings takes place in the usual way as that of physical hearing. We have already completed 3 weeks of virtual court hearing. We have encountered certain problems which I will highlight now. First, we notice that the quality of mic system bandwidth at the end of the sum of the representative is poor. Hence, their audio and video are not functioning properly. 2. In some of the cases, the email ID or phone number has not been furnished to the registry. Hence, the registry is unable to share the details of meeting link with those councils. Since the councils are represented from their respective places, we notice that there is no pressure on them, which is normally available in the course of physical hearings. Hence, we notice that some of the councils are taking too much time to present their case leisurely according to their convenience, thus wasting the time of bench as well as other waiting councils. Fourth, during physical hearings, someone might want to make a mention in between the cases. Normally, he stands up to elicit the attention of the bench, then seeks permission of the bench to make a mention, and if permitted, he will make a mention. He make his mention. However, we notice in virtual hearing, certain counsel are just gate crashing between the cases and make their mention without seeking permission of the bench. Obviously, they are doing this because they are in their respective fort. Then connectivity issue is there at all ends, even at the ITAT level also. In our tribunal, we have power backup. However, whenever power goes off, the internet connection also gets disconnected. After the resumption of power, either by main connection or by backup connection, we notice that the internet does not get connected immediately. That is, it takes few minutes to resume. Similar may be the case at the other side. It causes delay in hearing the cases. Next, in physical hearing, it is possible to furnish copies of certain documents, case laws across the bench and also to the other side. In virtual hearing, this is not possible. Hence, the representative should take utmost care and ensure that all documents, case laws which they wish to rely upon should be submitted well in advance to the tribunal and also to the other side. However, we have noticed that some of the counsels are lacking in this exercise, which results in wastage of time. Next, in most of the cases, representatives will not press certain grounds of appeals at the time of hearing. During physical hearings, we get endorsement in this regard on the grounds of appeal itself. In virtual hearing, it will not be possible. Hence, it will be beneficial to all if a letter is filed in advance or mail is sent in advance, specifying the grounds which are not being pressed. As of now, we have faced this problem only. More problems may come as we move forward. So now this COVID pandemic has brought many changes in all spheres of life. The expression normal has been replaced by the word new normal. Accordingly, the mode of judicial dispensation through virtual hearing has become part of new normal. During initial periods, everyone concerned shall definitely encounter problems. The best way to move forward is adjusting ourselves through trial and error basis and also by exchanging ideas through constructive discussions. This meeting is aimed for that only. It is my desire that all the stakeholders put in their sincere efforts so that virtual hearing prove to be an effective alternative to physical hearing under the new normal norms. In any case, if the virtual hearings become order of the day, let us be ready to face the challenge attached to it. I am sure with the cooperation of all stakeholders, virtual hearings shall become a success story. I thank BCIC for affording me an opportunity to share certain information and my thoughts. I also thank the organizers for conceiving an apt topic for this seminar, and it will sensitize all concerned about the mode of functioning of virtual hearings as of now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks so much for your comments to start with. Sir, before we get into the panel discussion, as I was mentioning at the beginning a few minutes back, so we'll take a very quick and very brief highlights and thoughts from Mr. Shivdas, followed with Mr. PVS, and then Mr. Paramchand K. The discussion. So in which time I have the idea is I have some questions around this topic. I will pose it to each of the state. And yes, as I mentioned earlier, it's all of you, but I think each one of you, I urge that you make use of the opportunity to post your questions. Please feel free to post your questions on the chat. I will take it up and pose it to the members as appropriate. So, from Mr. Shivdas, over to you, sir.
Good evening to all of you. See, there are 2-3 thoughts that come to my mind when we talk about virtual hearing. I would not say it would replace the physical hearing, but it would definitely go a long way in reducing physical hearings. So I was thinking, what is it that people can face? What is it that both from the practitioner side as well as from the bench, there can be an issue? See, the first thing which I think is the biggest advantage is the availability of opportunities is going to be more. People sitting in one place can definitely argue matters before several places. So somebody is sitting in Bangalore can argue matters before Delhi, before Bombay, before the various courts, including the Supreme Court. So that's one biggest advantage, which as an advantage which people may not get to that extent. Two, it will also be an advantage to the companies because they will reduce their huge expenses in terms of travel cost, in terms of the hospitality and all that. So that is one biggest advantage this virtual hearing is going to give to the practitioners. But the problem which we will encounter at least for some time, at least for I would say about a year or so, would be, as we were now seeing, the connectivity problems. Now, if this disruption is going to happen quite frequently, even if all steps are taken to ensure that the proper hearing takes place. But still, if these interruptions happen, what happens is it puts off the mood during a hearing. The judges will become impatient. The practitioners will lose the flow of their presentation. So that is going to be one factor which we will have to take into account before we really endorse virtual hearing as a new norm. And then, as Mr. Bhaskar was pointing out, we always, when we argue the matter, we give across the bench the case laws or the various documents which we think we were not able to place it before the authorities. Now, there is lack of clarity on how that will happen during a virtual hearing. Now, I'm not too sure whether the courts will go on to a facility of enabling the practitioners to send it across through a mail, that these are the documents I want to place it on record. These are the case laws I want to rely, because normally there is a practice of making a compilation and giving it. How is it that is going to happen in a virtual hearing? That is going to be a challenge, because you can't expect everybody to identify what are the case laws maybe a week before, submit it, etc. So that is going to be one of the challenges in a procedural issue. But more important, which I would see from the practice point of view, is law as a practice spreads by word of mouth in a court. So especially for the youngsters performance in a court is what will decide their accessibility or the preference of clients and parties. Now, how that is going to happen in a virtual hearing will be a challenge, because in a virtual hearing, it is going to be only for that particular counsel and maybe the client, and thereafter with the bench. Now, the advantage of everybody else witnessing that hearing, then trying to learn from that hearing, trying to learn from that the manner in which the presentation is done. Now, that may not take place in a virtual hearing. And more important is, especially for the youngsters, at least I have learned a lot by being in the court. Now, when you are in a court, you keep seeing people arguing matters. You see seniors handling the particular bench in a particular manner. You learn what we call as a court craft. And court craft, according to me, is 70% of a success in a particular matter. In fact, I would even put it as 80% in a particular matter. So that is something which the youngsters will lose in case they are not able to go for a physical hearing. In fact, I still remember when I was doing a matter in the Supreme Court. It was a revenue appeal before the Supreme Court. The Revenue Council was arguing, and I was able to see that it was completely out of facts, out of law. So I was telling my colleague that these are all the points I have to point out, etc. I had the legendary Mr. Parasaran Senior sitting behind me. So he was watching me be getting agitated over the way I have to turn around and tell all the points. But he was able to sense that the bench was not with the revenue's pleadings, and therefore they were almost making up their mind. So when I was able to start, he just came and told me he just whispered, you should know when to stop arguing rather than when to start arguing. Because he says the success of a lawyer is built on the learning of when to shut his mouth rather than when to open his mouth. He said, do not argue anything, just reiterate the tribunal's order and then leave it, see what happens. I was actually shocked. I said, I have prepared so much and therefore what is it? But then I stuck to his advice. I reiterated the tribunal's orders. The revenue's appeal was dismissed. Now, that is a great learning which we get from court.
Online register.
So therefore, that is one big learning which the youngsters may not have in a virtual hearing. So this is what my thoughts are. And as we progress further on to the questions, etc., we will always exchange our views on all this. But it has its own advantages and disadvantages. So according to me, virtual hearing should never replace a physical hearing. It should be definitely it should definitely take more place. But then when it requires, definitely a physical hearing should be conducted in a crucial matters, big matters, but otherwise maybe a part of the hearing in virtual so that you set the tone for the matter. Crucially, when it comes, have a physical hearing, continue with it should be a combination of virtual and physical hearing. I don't think one can replace the other. It may not be to the advantage of matters. It may not be to the advantage of administration of justice. That's my thought. Over to Badri.
You have to unmute, Madri. You have to unmute.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir, Shivdas sir. In fact, I should say that a couple of questions which I lined up, you already answered them. I'll take it from to elicit our view on that. And sir, request quick brief from your side.
Padam is taking. You are requesting Padam to take.
Badri, there's an issue with your voice. This thing, please. There's a continuous. It's not improved.
Not able to hear now, sir.
No.
You mentioned who is speaking. You mentioned that's enough.
Sir, either sir, I leave it to you and Padam, sir.
Okay. You are going to Padam first. Go ahead. Padamji, go ahead.
Good afternoon to everybody. I've had the benefit of listening to two eminent speakers prior to me, and therefore I will begin and with a matter of continuation of certain points that I have in mind, and in the process possibly also touch upon certain points that the preceding speakers have made. The system of administration of justice is an important pillar as far as the country's functioning is concerned. Therefore, all that we do in terms of moving from virtual, moving to a virtual hearing, dispensing with a physical hearing, in my opinion, the basic parameter should be that the adjudication or the dispensation of justice should be the prime priority. At no point of time we should compromise on the fact that the effectiveness and the quality of a justice delivery system is in any manner compromised. That's the most important aspect. And therefore, all our deliberations in terms of finding how we should go about, how should we change, to look into the change paradigm, should be with the basic principle that these dispensation mechanisms and the effectiveness of justice delivery system should be maintained. But what's important for us to understand and note that there are a lot of industries and functions that are working very well with a virtual system. Online, we have education on. Online banking is possible now. Online supplies of goods is possible. Software companies are working from home. Therefore, these are quite successful examples of you moving away from your normal place of work into a distant place of work and still demonstrate that you could be as effective as you were earlier. It's important for us, therefore, to look at these industries and find out what were the causes of success. Look at our causes of success. Look at our causes, if at all there is of some sort of a failure or a suboptimal performance, and ensure that what did they have that ensured their success. It's important that we imbibe those principles. This is important because, in my opinion, the national e-governance policy or plan is already in place. The government is committed to it. And as part of the national e-governance plan, we also have the e-courts projects. The government, therefore, very committed to the e-courts project. Therefore, it's a virtual reality. We can't, therefore, shirk away from this reality that e-courts are going to be a reality tomorrow. So only ensure that we have to be ensuring that the infrastructure is very robust, and both the speakers preceding me have spoken about the need for a robust infrastructure. Government, therefore, is already committed to ensure that the infrastructure of the courts and the government departments are strengthened. It's important to the council side also as to how we could have an improved infrastructure facility. Large firms could have their own infrastructure facilities. Possibly one could think of facilitation centers where infrastructure is in place, facilitation centers where robust connectivity, robust bandwidth, robust systems are in place, so that people could use. I'm not able to set up a system in my own office. We could use those facilitation centers. There are cubicles available, 5 or 6 cubicles available with adequate infrastructure to enable that people can use those facilitation centers to argue the matters before the courts concerned. And therefore, it's important for us to have the infrastructure from the council side also as equally important as the government would improve upon its own infrastructure. 2 or 3 important things are very noticeable. The government is going ahead with the e-assessments also, and we are going ahead with e-hearings at the tribunal. Rightly or wrongly, the middle stage, Commissioner of Appeals is not having the e-hearing proceedings as yet. Income Tax Department is going with e-assessments, tribunals are going with e-hearings. We don't have the Commissioner of Appeals now still looking at a e-hearing process. So there is a gap. I thought there should be some sort of a seamless connectivity between all stages of hearing so that some amount of consistency is maintained. But one important point to be noted is that the e-assessment is a faceless assessment. It's a faceless assessment. They're trying to say that there shall be no interaction between the assessee and the department. That means we're relying solely upon data, nothing else. You're not relying upon manpower. You're not relying upon a actual argument of the case concerned. You're relying solely upon data. In my opinion, that is some sort of a limitation in terms of the effectiveness as to how we could put across your points through only data. To that extent, courts are fine. Yeah, tribunals are fine because we have both the voice as also the data. We also have the video coming about where we could therefore effectively argue. Therefore, we are seen, we are observed, we are not only touched, that's all. Otherwise, everything else in terms of an effective hearing is available in e-courts concern. Over a period of time, possibly, we will have a mechanism whereby one could imagine 2 screens available, two screens available with the council, 1 screen only for video, 1 screen only for data. That similar 2 screens are with the opposite counsel and with the judges also, such that my video will be there with me. They can see me. Whatever I would like to present as a data, when we have 100% digitization happening, we will have therefore as on screen where we will be able to share on an ongoing basis all data concerned. So the case laws already given are fine. We also have therefore online submissions of arguments, submissions of case laws as the question may come arise in the course of the court proceeding. We have to evolve to that stage. We will take therefore some time. We've already begun the process, but possible therefore to visualize and imagine a situation that there will be 2 screens concerned from the judge's viewpoint and the council's viewpoint, 1 video and 1 data screen only. And once this happens in 100% digitization, there will be possibility of some sort of a physical hearing being replaced even in a virtual hearing. But as I said that, it's important that the accountant member, Mr. Bhaskaran, read about certain guidelines in Bangalore. I was only looking at the law, at section 255 of the Income Tax Act, which says that the tribunals can evolve their own procedures. Now, how do you evolve their own procedures concerned? In my opinion, there should be some statutory backing to this procedures concerned. Therefore, there has to be some things in place at the national level where these types of guidelines are statutorily incorporated. Some rules are made which have the force of law. Otherwise, you can't have guiding principles by various benches concerned. You should have a situation where these are incorporated at a national level policy such that they acquire some sort of a legislative power in terms of the binding effect. We have, for example, the Karnataka High Court giving its own rules, having its own rules, not in a guidance form, but in form of rules itself. And we should have some sort of a similar rules as far as the tribunal functioning also is concerned. There is an interesting point that Mr. Shivdas made in terms of professional opportunities being available for a council to argue across the country. I was also imagining a similar benefit available from the judges' side. That today we are having a certain courts at small places like Goa or like Agra. We are having therefore members being there, not utilized properly. Tomorrow there is a possibility therefore that the president would constitute a bench at his choice, where we have members across the country forming a bench for the purpose of hearing the matter. Today we had a special bench in the morning where we had the president of the tribunal from Ahmedabad, vice president from Delhi, 1 vice president from Bangalore, the council arguing from Bombay. So it's a possibility, therefore, that the roster of the benches concerned could also be so well designed that important cases, important points could be decided by a constitution bench, which comprises of members across the country, by which you could have far more effective delivery system in terms of justice. Because the tribunal has a motto, Sulabh Nyay, Satwar Nyay, speedy justice and easy justice. That should be the guiding principle for the purpose of evolving procedures, so that you will be able to achieve the motto of the tribunal in terms of having an effective delivery system of justice without compromising on the principles of adjudication. These would be my preliminary thoughts. We'll have some occasion to refer to some other thoughts in the course of the discussion.
ಇದು ನಟ್ಟು ಇದು ಏನೇ ಇಲ್ಲ correct.
Sir, previous sir.
I will not take too much time. I only thought from my limited experience. From my limited experience, what I miss is the courtroom decorum. When I'm on legs, I get a feeling that I'm arguing better. When I'm sitting, I feel that I'm a little more casual with my hearing. The flow of thought is not the same as it would be when you are on your legs. In fact, the classic saying that thinking on the legs, actually it is really true. We do think on our legs as the proceedings go. We do adjust our hearing arguments from time to time. But in a virtual hearing, it looks like somewhat like a film actor, that you know the dialogue you have to recite. You go and recite it and come to the extent you can do it well. If your photo is well done, if your capture is fine, you are able to deliver it on a day, good, it's all fine. If you are not able to do it well, then bad luck, we have to look for the next day. That is one part of it. The one thing which I also noticed is that arguments in a court are always based on observation of deep body language of the court, of the members who are present, the counterparty arguments, and even those who are present. When you know that you have not done the correct argument, you get a feel immediately. That feel is missing here. I don't get to know that I have done well or I have not done well, or I should do some code correction while I am arguing, so that I can put across the same point a little more forcefully. What I would have done in a courtroom, I am not able to do in a virtual hearing. There is one significant advantage in Bangalore, I thought I'll mention it, is that there's always a tension of reaching before the court time. Even if you leave on time, the traffic was really a hindrance. There was always an anxiety whether you'll reach the courtroom on time, and you will not make the members wait for you even for a moment. That anxiety has gone, because we can be very comfortably placed in our offices or homes and then take the hearing. The one practice which possibly is not desirable, but maybe it's happening in some places, is that clients also sit with you. In a courtroom, they would not disturb you so often. They may occasionally whisper into your ears, but not so often as it may happen in a virtual hearing. In a virtual hearing, it is virtually 2 ears you are given, 1 ear to hear the court and the other ear to hear the client. So virtually you have to use both the ears as you are speaking. This may not be a good practice, because courtroom may not allow the privileges, but these privileges come in a virtual hearing. I'll leave these thoughts and we can proceed with the questions which you have.
Sure, sir. Sir, thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for those things. I remember the last few days back when I was talking to PBS, he did mention saying, "Look, Badri, I'm not Amitabh Bachchan to stare into the camera and talk." So that is going to be a challenge going forward as far as virtual hearings are concerned. I agree with you, sir. So what I'll do over the next maybe 60 minutes is I've lined up a few questions to each of our panelists. So I will take them. That's going to be a mix of some of them on the legal side, some of them are practical, and some of them are procedural. Yes, I should also say that as part of the initial comments, I think most of our panelists have covered quite a few of my questions already. So let me start with saying, strictly on the legal side. Sir, one aspect is one question I definitely had for all the 4 panelists was, should this format be optional or mandatory? I think we've already had that answer from each one of you, sir. Thank you so much. But in continuing the same aspect, Sir, there are quite a few enthusiasts today, who believe that this is the way the hearings have to be conducted. Even after normalcy is restored. Whereas, yes, there are a lot of others, including the panelists today, have expressed concerns over this method of hearing. So, in line with this, sir, the requirement is generally that the legal side of it is that, the hearing, the proceedings have to be conducted in an open court. It should be conducted in an open court. And open court, this is specifically stated as far as Article 145(4) is concerned in the Constitution, where it says it should be in an open court. Sir, legally, do you think, my question now is to Mr. PVS and Mr. Shivdas, you think this will stand the legal test? You think this will hold the fort as far as being called as an open court?
My guess is that it is an open court, except that it has a remote access to people. People can observe the proceedings. They can come, and certainly I've seen even large, even High Court matters, even Supreme Court matters. We can log in and put our camera as well as the mic on mute modes, and then we can observe the proceedings as you would observe in a court hall. So that is really an open court. That means we are able to observe the proceedings. Certainly that is facilitated by technology. So I don't see as a legal issue, but I certainly say I miss the experience. Sometimes you see very powerful arguments from advocates, and the bench also sometimes posing very difficult questions. The courtroom aura is certainly missing here. That much I will say. The experience is different, but the technicality of law is certainly not missed out. There's an open court effect because virtually you can know who all participated. The login details are available. There will be a record of who have come. I can even say who is recording a particular proceeding also will be known. Whether recording is permissible or not, we'll have the next question from you. But essentially, even that is possible as to who has recorded the conversation or the proceedings. So I'll say it satisfies the test of open court.
Okay, sure, sir. Sir, Shivdas, sir.
See, when we say open court, what it means is that the arguments, the observations, and the both sides arguments should be conducted in an open manner. That is what it means as an open court. It should never be done in chambers. It should be done in an open court. As PVS is pointing out, virtual hearing also is a type of an open court where you are logging in and then you are able to see what the bench is asking and you are able to react to it. So it is definitely to that extent an open court. Now, two things. One is as of now, the accessibility is limited. It is only to, at least in the High Court, it is only to the advocates who are presenting the matter, and there is also a facility of the client or particular client also logging in to participate. Now, even in Supreme Court, for example, if we have to argue, there is an advocate on record who gets the link and then he passes it on to us, and then 3 of us, 4 of us argue before the court. So to that extent, it is an open court. But what is significant is, even in fact, after the live streaming starts, see, today there is a proposal to do a live streaming of the hearings in all the courts. It's a big demand that happens. Even after live streaming happens, you can definitely be in one place and watch what is happening. To that extent, it is open. But as PVS is pointing out, the manner in which you are in a court, in a physical court, and the manner in which the hearings happen, you are able to participate physically, and how you are able to associate yourself with what is happening in the court. To that extent, it will not be an open court. So that is slightly different. How you are able to associate yourself with what is happening in the court. To that extent, it will not be an open court. That is slightly different. How you are able to associate yourself with what is happening in the court. I think, Prithvi, you should mute somebody who is getting into all this.
Sure, I have a point. This is a very interesting concept. Therefore, I have something to add on a question. Open court proceedings are fine, but I would like to add the legal aspect of this, some sort of a legal query to this. That they say that the appellate tribunal shall be a civil court for all purposes of the Act. Now, what is the civil code definition? Where is it going to extend about now? Because we have some sort of a proceeding in a room which is called as the court. All counsels are there, the judges are there, and that is called as the court. So therefore, the definition of court is in terms of a physical hearing, well known and understood. But when you're arguing from remote places now, therefore I'm arguing from my chambers now, will my chamber also be called as a court if I'm guilty of some offense now? Can it be said that I've committed an offense in the course of a court? I have committed an offense in a court concern. The temple of justice that was there, now the pujaris are asked to stay away from the temple and argue the matter from outside the temple. If the pujaris were to commit an offense, could it be a situation that the pujaris did commit an offense within the temple premises? It's going to be a very interesting issue. What is the definition of court, therefore? It may be judicial proceeding is one part of the story, but it has to be a court. What shall be the definition of court? We need to have some sort of a understanding, change understanding of what to be meant by a court, what will be the premises that will be regarded as a court now.
See,
Shivdas,
you see, no, you see, I was only reacting to this to say that when you talk about a court, the court essentially is a place where the petitioners, the respondents, the judges, and the associated parties are there. That is what normally is considered as a court. It is more a concept. The physical place is more a place where this concept gets implemented. Now, even in a virtual hearing, if you are going to have a situation of all these the participating parties being available, and it is open for people to view what is happening. So to that extent, my thought is it will satisfy the definition of a court. Yes, whether the court should also enable everybody else to participate and see what is happening, that's slightly a different point. But otherwise, I think it may satisfy the definition of a court. I don't see a problem there. In fact, virtual hearings, I'm told, happens not only in India, and otherwise also globally also, I think the virtual hearings are happening even especially during this time. So I don't think a challenge can be made to that. But yes, the proceeding should be transparent in that everybody should be in a position to know what is happening, at least the participating parties. In fact, one challenge that can come in all this is normally what happens is suppose I am a petitioner's counsel. When I argue, I am able to see the judges are able to hear me. But sometimes it so happens that we are not able to hear the other side, the department side, whoever is arguing on behalf of the department, we are not able to hear. So therefore, that would be a disadvantage. So these are all the things that needs to be sorted out before we really approve this. But my take is that I don't think there would be a challenge to the question that it would be a court or not. Yes, Badri. Badri?
Shivdas sir, you can take over the proceedings, and when Badri joins, he can take over.
Sir, I am here. Let me take it from where Mr. Shivdas mentioned. He mentioned this is there are virtual hearings that are conducted across the world in various other jurisdictions too. So let's try and understand what are those experiences. Sir, if Mr. Padam or Mr. PVS can help us understand this.
In a virtual meeting, you should be specific. Once you say two people, both will speak. So you mention either PVS or Padam. So I think if I have to tell you, we have to a little more improvements will come in our own setting of judicial dispensation of justice. Like there may be some developments to say, make your submissions in writing. The hearing will be restricted to 5-10 minutes, 15 minutes, so that only those points where agreements and disagreements have to be argued. You don't have to argue the entire case. You only argue the points of difference between the two counsels. And of course, if the learned judges of the court also have difference of opinion, they may have those questions pointed out. So virtually everything is sorted out prior to the court hearing. The counsels exchange their notes. Everything is placed on a card. the hearing is reduced to only about 10 minutes, 15 minutes for even very complex matters, where you only take the court of the court's time to explain what is not explained already. Certain times words are written words are not enough. You may want to explain it in spoken words, and therefore it has a help. I think that is the word. That's the world. It will mature, and that is how many courts, tax courts in the US and other things function. The exchange of notes between the counsels and bring out only the final difference of points which the court is required to decide. I think that will help the court also to decide. Today, even the members may become slightly tired because they keep on hearing arguments, long ones, which are known to all parties, and there's no resolution required. The final point of resolution may be a very small difference between the two counsels, which they may have to resolve. I think if we mature towards that, it will work.
Sure, sir. Sir, Padam, sir.
I have a couple of points from what PV has said, and beyond that. Virtual hearing means two things. One, technology comes in a big way. Technology comes in a big way with other attendant features to make. For example, therefore, artificial intelligence is going to be a big deployment strategy tomorrow. What do I mean by artificial intelligence? Today, there are a number of tools available. I was told that there is a tool called as Lex Machina in US, which gives you the possibility of a solution to a particular fact that you give about. There are rigorous solutions in this country, a database which is called as Rigorous, which gives you an analysis, which gives you a summary, which gives you a for and against, which gives you a possibility as to what will happen, the probability of the success of your case, both depending upon before whom you are arguing, depending upon the way in which the facts have been presented. So artificial intelligence is going to play a significant role in terms of the assistance from the counsel side. From the point of view of the tribunals or from the point of view of the courts, this is going to be, in my opinion, giving rise to, if the same element of research and artificial intelligence is available to the members of the judiciary, there's going to be possible, in my opinion, a far better research, a far better quality of writing, a far better, quicker way of dispensation of justice. This is going to be a record of what's happening. Therefore, the transparency and accountability is going to be very high. But to me, the greatest benefit, and I was looking at a report, and therefore I thought I will share the report contents. The greatest benefit to me would be the saving of paper by moving to digitization. I was told that the Supreme Court has about 60,000 cases heard every year. Now, 8 copies of each case are prepared, and on an average, if 100 pages is the size of a particular case, we can imagine the amount of pages that the Supreme Court were to consume. I was told that about 1.2 lakh cases are heard by the High Court every year. So we therefore have some sort of a similar statistics to be gone about. And we have the lower cases, where therefore there is some sort of a repetition in terms of the paper's usage. The sum total of the usage of paper, I was told, is 11 billion sheets a year. The courts consume per year 11 billion sheets. This translates to, for example, if one tree can give you about 8,333 sheets of paper, and to get one sheet of paper, you require about 10 liters of water. Therefore, they're saying that you're required to have 1.3 million trees destroyed for the purpose of getting paper for the courts concerned, and we require about 109 billion liters of water for the purpose of satisfying this requirement of court. If you have digitization, in my opinion, there's going to be a significant saving in terms of our natural resources. And therefore, the greatest benefit in terms of technology coming to the aids of courts would be that we'll be able to have the records being maintained for a longer duration. These could therefore be not saving, will be saving space, will be saving paper, will have a proper recording done, transparency will be available. The fact somebody was mentioning that I have not made my arguments or point very clearly, that I was not able to be heard, or what I said has not been recorded, all those disputes will possibly dissipate if you're having the records of the court proceeding be maintained for a longer point of time. You could have an access to all of those records concerned to validate whether the ultimate decision that is met out by the judges concerned have taken into consideration all the points that have been argued. Therefore, it's important that the associated benefits of technology from the point of view of the councils, from the point of view of the government, and from the point of view of the courts are appreciated before we get into a deeper process of how these changes are going to affect individually, some of us as councils or some of us as the department representatives.
So thank you, sir. Thank you so much. There are two things really coming out of what Padam sir just mentioned. One is definitely the undoubted savings in the natural resources, undoubted, sir. And the second is, sir, you were mentioning about this aspect of that was the first thing. The second thing, sir, about the participation. I take this question to Mr. Bhaskaran. Sir, you also mentioned that there is one comment that came out from all the panelists earlier to say that the interruption from the clients may actually increase in the background or while we are sitting together and taking. Sir, just extending that same thing. Will the same link be allowed to be used by the clients also who may be in a different location? Will that be possible, sir, in the current setup?
As of now, as Mr. Padam sir, government has not formulated any rules with regard to virtual hearing. And each of the courts are formulating their with regard to virtual hearing. In Bangalore, we have mentioned that you should not share your link to anyone else except the client. Until there is no client has participated in any of the proceedings, only representatives are acting before us. Some consultation normally it will take place, consultation will take place, but you should not interrupt the court proceedings. That's all.
Sir, thank you so much, sir. The other aspect that came out from what Padam sir was mentioning was recording of these proceedings. He said it could probably be, with the technology being in the forefront on these aspects, I think recording is just a click away. Sir, what is the view if I have to post this to Mr. Bhaskaran and Mr. Padam? Sir, do you think we'll hear it from Mr. Bhaskaran first? Sir, do you think we should record these proceedings?
Again, it would depend upon the government's intention and how they bring out rules and regulation. In Bangalore, we have said nobody should record. We are not enabling the recording.
Okay.
Unless
sir,
government
Padam sir,
clear rules and regulations, nobody can answer this question.
Okay. Understood, sir. Padam sir, do you think we should consider recording these? Of course, within once the appropriate amendments are made to the law, it is allowed, etc. But do you think these should be recorded, and how do you think it may help, sir?
To me, a couple of things are important. What is the current practice when the physical hearings were happening in Bangalore? They were recorded. The archival was for a definite period of time, but the proceedings were recorded in the court. We have a camera in the court, and therefore both audio and video are being recorded. That they were not being maintained, or they were being maintained for a limited duration of time is an issue.
For one month only.
For 1 month only. That's right. That's a limited but the important point, therefore, for us to look at and therefore make a statement is that recording has been the practice, at least in physical courts. It happened a year or 2 years, not more before that. We didn't have a recording before that.
Sir, Mr. Kincha, I would interrupt.
Yeah.
Now recording, it happens only at ITAT level.
Yes.
Physical hearing. It doesn't happen at the client level or representative level. Now in virtual hearing, it may be possible that any participant can record the proceeding.
Yeah, that's a very interesting proposition, sir. But if the courts are recording, in my opinion, therefore, that process of court recording should continue. I don't think we should discontinue the process of court recording. The court should record and maintain. And once we are having the recording, the records need to be maintained not for a short duration of time. The records have to be maintained for a longer duration of time, because you don't require too much of space in terms of physical, you only require digital space concern. But that ensures, in my opinion, a couple of things, therefore. in my opinion, once digitization happens across the courts, across the country, there'll be some sort of a seamless movement of information across the various courts concerned. That's an extremely significant point in terms of dispensation of justice, that we have some sort of a seamless link in terms of happening across the courts concerned. One. Two, that if the recording is now the process concerned, it adds to a lot of transparency in terms of how the court proceedings have happened. Therefore, also has a situation that malified allegations can be taken care of by ensuring that these records are evidence of what actually transpired in the courts, such that the malified allegations made by somebody are taken care of in terms of these recordings concerned. And therefore, in my opinion, if it is a natural consequence that if the Supreme Court is saying we will make our hearings all transparent over a period of time, therefore transparency is going to be the watchword in terms of judicial proceedings, then the logical step forward for transparency should be that these are recorded for the purpose of ensuring that what happens in terms of dispensation of justice is adequately borne from what has been actually the performance in the courts concerned.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thanks a ton. Sir, moving on from there, I have one question on the practical side or the procedural side. This I would request Padam sir and Shivdas sir to comment on this. We'll go in the same order. First Mr. Padam and then Mr. Shivdas. Sir, this is, as I told you, it's more on the procedural side. Today, if we have to, kind of show a video in a courtroom, it is not that easy. There are procedures to be followed, and it takes some. There are certain protocols, etc. With the virtual format, it can be very easy. It can be as simple as by allowing the appellant or the respondent, either way, to allowing them to share their screens. I'll give you an example, sir. I'll give you an example more from a indirect tax side. In central excise, of course, it's one of the earlier laws. If we had to explain the concept of manufacture, there is so much of debate that we had to go through, as against if I was given an opportunity to maybe show a video in terms of how does the raw material look, what are the processes it goes through, and how does the final product look. It would make it that much more easier and effective in the court of law. So do you think today I understand that screen sharing is not allowed. Do you think that should be allowed, sir?
If I have to speak first, I will therefore make two comments. One from the practical side, one from the legal side. You made a right point to say that I could, by virtue of demonstrating, therefore, how will demonstrate? I could possibly play a video, I could possibly demonstrate by a visual, I could therefore have certain clips being shown to say that this is what I'm doing, and this is the actual operation that the SSC is carrying out. And if that were to be therefore a visualized presentation of what actually transpires at the factory of an SSC concern, it will be possible for the judges to appreciate that, yes, this process is possibly manufactured. I'm able to see the process, I'm able to see the equipment, the machinery, the people, and I'm able to also understand from the flow chart concerned as to what actually happens at the shop floor level. That will be possible a little better in terms of only a counsel putting it across. He may not be as technically competent to put it across to say what is the way in which the engineering process is happening there, how we could describe that in the court of law. Therefore, it may, in my opinion, therefore, technology will make it more effective. But what's happening is that these could become additional evidence before the tribunal. Got to be therefore careful in terms of the law process concerned, that if they were not led at the lower courts concerned, then this will tantamount to additional evidence before the courts. This is tantamount to putting facts that are not there before the lower authority is concerned. And therefore, either the tribunal should permit that, or it should make a request to the tribunal to allow you to have this additional evidence being led. And therefore, it will have to be an evaluation by the judges concerned as to whether that type of a presentation that is happening, was it available at the lower authorities? Does it tantamount to an additional evidence? Should it therefore be now allowed? What will be the impact of a process of legalities in terms of this type of evidence coming in before the court's concerned? But in my opinion, in terms of making a statement that I will have a video now, I'll have clips now, effectiveness of presentation, effectiveness of able to convey it more more robustly, more appropriately, is definitely going to be bolstered by the videos and data stream that can be shown to the members in the course of the procedure.
Thank you, sir. Sir, Shivdas, sir.
You have to unmute yourself, sir. You have to unmute yourself.
Now it's okay, sir.
Yeah, it's okay now.
Now, see in SESTAT earlier, I myself have done it. We can show a video of what was the process, or we had taken permission from the tribunal to set up a screen, and then through the laptop we have always showed what the process, etc. is. So that used to happen frequently in the tribunal earlier. Of course, over a period of time, that instances have come down, but otherwise that always used to happen in the tribunal. The legality of it, as Mr. Padam was pointing out, is yes, if you have not explained this process in so many terms in writing to the tribunal, before the lower authorities, we have to say that again to the tribunal. Yes, you need to get their permission. But if you have explained it in terms, and if it is going to be crucial to deciding the matter, definitely these video presentations in any manner can definitely be taken into account by the tribunal, and the courts cannot refuse. Let's assume that you have not taken it before the lower authority, but you have taken it before the first appellate authority, and he says you have not taken to the lower authority. At the end of the day, the tribunal being a final fact-finding authority, the tribunal has to take into account these additional evidences. We should only demonstrate that it is crucial to the matter, and therefore, if that is to be considered, and in a physical hearing that was being considered, it should also be enabled in a virtual hearing. How you do it, how you can set up another screen and then show it, etc. It's a matter of procedure. But definitely, this should be allowed by the courts. And if it is allowed in a physical hearing, it should equally be allowed in a virtual hearing also.
Thank you, sir. Thanks so much for your comments on that. Sir, maybe one on the...
Sorry for interruption, Mr. Badrinath. I don't think any tribunal will deny or object to furnishing of this video presentation. Tribunal we have accepted CDs, which is the manufacturing process.
Yes, sir.
We have accepted.
Noted, sir. Noted.
When I was working in Visakhapatnam, one manufacturer, manufacturing activity, assessing officer said, no, before also it is here, after also it is here. Where is the manufacturing activity? And the process to assessing officer, and they presented to the assessing officer. Same was presented to us also. We played the CD in the court and found that it involves lot of processes. And finally, we accepted it as a manufacturing activity.
Sure, sir. Sure. Sure, sir. Sir, one maybe it is more. Okay. Sir, there is one on the practical side. The next question is what we kind of experienced in the last few seconds and at the beginning of this webinar also. Sir, not always for sure, but there is a challenge on the connectivity today. Like what I experienced at the beginning, and we have a lot of disturbance now also. So in those cases, okay, I'll continue, sir. Sir, am I audible now, sir?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Normally, Badri, in the other webinars, we don't have so much of disturbance. When in this discussion about the virtual hearing, there is so much of disturbance.
That's what I was thinking of. That's what I was thinking of. In fact, all the webinars have been seamless for me also.
Absolutely.
Sir,
that's what I was
so remaining on this connectivity issue, sir, when something like this happens during the
place, you are under virtual hearing.
So true, sir. Sir, yeah. So if something like this happens during the course of the hearing, sir, what is the legal ramification? Should we kind of, go back, hear the case again, or let's take a case where I am one of the person arguing, and now I've had quite a few challenges on the connectivity today for reasons beyond me, beyond my control. So while we had Mr. Shivdas who could have continued the moderation of this session today, in a virtual hearing format, I may not have anybody, sir. So if I get disconnected, what happens there? So my question is more connected to what Mr. Padam sir, was mentioning few minutes back. Is if we are able to kind of record this session, maybe we can continue from where we stopped. If we are not recording the situation, maybe I have to start afresh again in these hearings. You think a combination of being able to record and this will pave the way, sir? This is I would like Mr. Bhaskaran's views on this.
See, I think this question has been raised by a person who has not participated in any of the court proceedings.
Okay.
In particularly in the income tax, arguments are made on ground-wise basis. There is a concept of part here matter. So when a particular counsel is not able to complete his case, we treat it as part head and carry it to some other convenient date. In that date, it will start from the place where it stopped earlier. So this concept is already available in physical hearing. So for the merely because there is some interruption, there is no necessity to start afresh. You can start from the place where you stopped earlier.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Normally, we as judges note down all important points raised by the counsels. We note down in a logbook. So we remember what you argued. So there should not be any problem to start from the place where it ended earlier.
Excellent, sir. Sir, just remaining on the same concept before we hear it from Mr. PVS on the same question. Sir, you think recording can be an alternate for maintenance of logbooks, sir? Practically, how would you look at it, sir?
The recording, as Mr. Padam sir mentioned, may be helpful when there arises some dispute with regard to the arguments made by the counsel, which was not accepted with the judges, like that some dispute, but it is rarest of rare. In my 10-11 years of experience, so far nobody has raised any question that this argument has not been accepted and has not been considered. Normally, by experience, we are noting down all the important points of the arguments made by the counsels. And when in the case of complicated matter, we ask for written submissions, which normally cover all the arguments of the counsels, and we consider everything while delivering the decision. So recording part will help only when there is a dispute with regard to the some dispute between the court and the counsel with regard to certain point, but it is the rarest of the rare occasion.
Understood, sir. Understood. Thank you, sir. Previous, sir.
See, unless there's a law for recording which is laid out, we must go on the basis that, as honorable member said, there's an open court process. You make your arguments. There's a counterparty on the other side. The members take notes. They take notes from time to time. There's a log which is maintained. The arguments are placed. Many times, if the arguments are complex, the counsels often take the privilege of making written submissions to ensure that the thought process and the submissions are all made available to the members. After all, there's a gap between the arguments and the order writing. So that gap also gets filled up using written submissions and all. So I think the court process today works on the basis that everybody is acting bona fide and they will continue to do. It has worked well. On most of the occasions, it has worked very well. Occasionally, when disputes do arise, I think it's nice to sort it out, not on the basis that we recorded the conversation. It's nice to sort it out even otherwise, using the intervention of bar counsels and so on and so forth, rather than escalating it to a evidence matter, whether I was heard or not heard, that will amount to putting the justice in the place and not trusting him. I think that may not be the greatest of idea. But if the law mandates finally that there should be recording, it will be part of a law. But I would say this is a extremely well-placed judicial system. Hearing means hear, and you complete the hearing, get an understanding of the case. Sometimes what is not said also is understood by the members, certainly, because they know the context in which a particular argument has been made, and they will be able to understand a little more. So I would say, let us go on the continued basis that it has worked well all along. There has not been too many failure events or suspicious events, I would say. So what's called the dispute between the whether I said something or I did not say something, that should be left to the system of, after all, if they are judges to judge the issues, they will be judges even to judge whether I said or not. I will leave it at that.
Done, sir. Sir, very well summarized. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks a ton. Sir, we did, sir, during the discussion for the previous one, sir, we did come across, we mentioned about rehearing the matter, or maybe continuing from where it stopped at. So rehearing the matter also happens practically, sir. I've experienced this in a few cases where, because of transfers and, promotions of the departmental representatives. So where, the case was part heard may have to be reheard. So in this context, would like Mr. Bhaskaran's and Mr. Padam's views on this. Sir, you think because it's going to be technology enabled, because it doesn't really require me to be present at the court physically, sir, in these matters where, the departmental representative has got transferred, or, there is a role change, etc. You think in the virtual format, we can request them to participate from where they are so that we can take the case to its logical end faster? You think that is possible, sir? Mr. Bhaskaran, sir.
This question has to be put to Income Tax Department, because before us, Income Tax Department is like you. The Income Tax Department is one party, you are another party.
Sir, sure, sir. So I will take the cue from what you told. Sir, I will post this question to Mr. Shivdas, because as all of us know, Shivdas, sir, has been with the department for very many years before he got into the practice. Sir, how would you look at this, sir?
No, see, what happens today is that normally our experience has been, suppose the DR gets transferred or he is promoted and he goes to another place, it has to be reheard. 9 out of 10 times the department does take permission from the respective authorities to re-engage him in the matter. He will come back for a short time only for that matter and re-argue the matter. That is now an accepted practice, and the authorities seem to be quite clear about it, because they know that the person who has argued the matter, he will be familiar, and instead of asking somebody to go through the file completely once again, they will say, no, let him take off from wherever it was left last time. So that practice is being done. Yes, this use of virtual hearing will definitely enable him to join from wherever he is at whatever post is there. Of course, it all depends upon the post to which he goes. Suppose he goes to a place where it is not possible for him to represent and argue, then he may not be in a position to do it. But otherwise, I think these virtual hearings should enable him, the particular person, to move to argue from his place and then restart the matter and say where it is, and so that he completes the arguments. That is possible. That is not an issue. And of course, as Mr. Bhaskar was pointing out, while we complete the arguments and thereafter it is posted on another day and then we restart. But more often than not, the first 5 or 10 minutes, all of us, for the benefit of both the members, the respondents, or for everybody, we always recapitulate what has happened last time for about 5-10 minutes, and thereafter we resume. So that it enables everybody. It enables even Mr. Bhaskar sitting as a member to immediately strike a note of what has happened earlier. So it travels fast. Thereafter, he gets into the log and he is able to summarize, get into it faster. That normally happens in the courts. So this will enable the DRs to participate from wherever they are. It will enable, in fact, you'll have a combination of suppose the member is transferred from one place to another when this matter is posted for a rehearing. The same member can always participate along with the existing member in order to complete the hearing. The DRs can come from wherever they are, participate at the virtual hearing, and then they can also do it. Of course, SSCs can always do it. So it can be it can facilitate all sorts of combinations if virtual hearing happens.
But for that,
Thanks, sir. Sir, Padam sir.
for that, the concerned higher authority's permission is required.
Yeah, there are therefore
Yes, sir.
issues. There are
Suppose
Yes,
I
sir,
am
absolutely.
transferred from Bangalore to somewhere else, and I have got a pot head matter. Normally, what happens now is that matter
Sir,
will be
Padam sir.
released. Then it will be placed before some other bench. Then you have to start the hearing afresh. Now, in virtual hearing, what Mr. Shivadas told is correct. Our president can permit me to continue to hear the case from wherever I am.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, Padam sir, we'd like
No,
to hear your
as
comments on this
yeah,
also.
yeah. This is a situation where the provision is made under section 255(1) and subsection 2 of the Income Tax Act, whereunder the president can designate that the matter shall be heard by a particular bench. Therefore, what Mr. Bhaskaran is saying is correct. It shall be the prerogative of the president concerned to ensure that the continuity in hearing is maintained, and therefore we'll have an effective disposal of the case by ensuring that the member, although he is out of that location, is now for that particular case being posted back by the order of the president to hear that matter concerned. Similarly, therefore, for the department also, they have their own hierarchy in the reporting system. They function under particular principal commissioners. If the person is therefore moving out of, let us say, Bangalore to Bombay, now he'll be working under a different principal commissioner, and therefore there has to be some sort of he'll also be assigned duties there. Therefore, it will amount to some sort of a disturbance in his duties, and therefore there has to be some sort of a procedural clearances are being taken to ensure that the same DR would come back to argue the matter concerned. We don't find this happening, at least in income tax matters, very frequently, where the council is coming back for the purpose of arguing the matter. Shivdas just mentioned that there are situations in indirect taxes, but in direct tax cases, we don't find too many cases where the councils have been asked to come back to argue this matter concern. In fact, between different benches also, the councils are reluctant to go back to the earlier bench to argue the matter because they say we don't have instructions from our principal commissioner. Therefore, the principal commissioner should have the permission granted to the councils to go back and argue the matters concerned. Otherwise, from a department hierarchy, there could be some element of technical glitch in asking the same council to argue the matter concerned.
Noted, sir. Yes, we see this happen at the CESTAT and the KAT also. In fact, in a couple of our cases also it has happened. So that is very well happening in the real world. Sir, we spoke about open courts, we spoke about court crafts, etc. Sir, one more thing, especially my knowledge is on the CESTAT side for this matter. We've had a challenge on having a permanent division bench at Bangalore for a very long time, sir. Very long time. So, so this question is more on the more on the technical side. I would like to hear from Mr. Bhaskaran and Mr. Shivdas on this in the same order. Basically, sir,
We are unable to hear you, Badri, again.
this
We are not able to hear you. I'm not able to follow you, Badri.
with the new with this being the virtual world, the way we are looking at all this, will the process of having a division bench. Hello, sir, Shivdas sir, able to hear me?
Yeah, but it's breaking. Your voice is breaking, Badri.
Okay, I don't know, sir. I know. So my question was more on even now, sir. Sir, even now. Sir, now, sir?
Yes, yes, now it's clear.
Yeah, now it's clear.
Okay, sorry for that. Sir, my question was more on the side of my thoughts was, will this virtual format make the setting up of special benches and division benches a lot more easier than it was earlier? Because as I told you, just in case it was not clear when I spoke earlier, sir, my experience is more on the CESTAT side, where we've had a challenge for quite some time in not having a permanent division bench. Would like to hear from Mr. Bhaskaran and then Mr. Shivdas on this.
So Mr. Padam Kincha told today Bangalore benches of ITAT conducted one special bench matter. Our president was sitting in Ahmedabad. Another vice president was sitting in Delhi. Our present vice president is sitting in Bangalore. Department representative is from Bangalore. Associate representative was from Bombay. The hearing went on for 1.5 hours. So it is possible. And what I also heard is Mr. Vinit Kothari, Justice Vinit Kothari, now working in Madras High Court, he is hearing the cases from Jodhpur.
Excellent.
He is hearing the cases from Jodhpur. His bench partner is hearing the case from Chennai. In ITAT also, in Hyderabad vice president is sitting in Delhi. So Hyderabad a bench consisting of Hyderabad vice president and a Hyderabad member sitting in Hyderabad, they conducted certain hearings. So what you ask is now possible. But it is the prerogative of the president to constitute such a kind of benches. Yes, Mr. Badrinath. Mr. Badrinath.
Badri may want to ask a question, sir. Where will be the appeal against that order lie?
Absolutely. Correct, sir. Thank you. Yes, mentioned this.
Yeah, Badri.
Hello. Hi, sir. So thank you so much, sir. In fact, I also know that.
Difficult, but again, we're finding it difficult to follow you.
No, I think by the time Badri joins, sir. I think this question was also asked to me, so I thought
Yes,
I will
yes.
also answer by the time
Yes.
Badri joins.
Yes.
In fact, my take is that this virtual hearing for some time should definitely solve the problem of the lack of bench in Bangalore as far as CESTAT is concerned. In fact, even today, we have the technical member being part of another bench, is coming on tour, etc. So we should have a situation where the judicial member from some other place should join, the technical member also should join from some other place, and we should have continuity of benches through this virtual hearing till permanent members are posted. This should definitely help the CESTAT. This should also help the larger special bench, larger bench, all that should be enabled through this process. I think to that extent it should really be helpful. Badri?
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead.
Towards last few questions, I have in the legal side. Implement virtual hearings, the provisions and the way I look at it is that we have circular any of the ICAT or CISTAT or the High Court rules, or the way they have done it will stand the test of law, sir.
Your question
Hello.
is not audible.
Sir, am I audible, sir?
Yeah.
Now it's
Okay.
better, Badri.
Sorry for that,
You'll
sir.
have to repeat your question. You'll repeat your question, please.
I will do that. I will do that, sir. My question was more on the legal side. We'll take. I would like to elicit comments from Mr. From all four of you, in fact, on this aspect before we close. Today, the way we have looked at the virtual hearing format, issuing a public notice, some circulars, and procedure aspects, procedural notes. Does it require an amendment or some provisions to enable this virtual format in the CESTAT rules or ATAT rules or provisions there? How do we really look at it? My question simply put is, the way we have implemented, given the COVID background, will it stand the legal? Sir, we'll start with Mr. Bhaskaran's comments on this.
So as of now, as on today, we are moving to this virtual hearing, thinking that COVID pandemic is temporary in nature. That's why government has also not come out with the clear-cut regulations, and it has allowed the courts or tribunals to regulate their own procedures. In fact, in ITAT, each zone is regulating its own procedure. It is under the impression that it is temporary in nature. Once it becomes order of the day, definitely government will come out with the rules and regulations, which everyone has to follow.
Noted, sir. Noted. Sir, Padam sir, how would you look at this, sir?
Pardon?
Padam sir, how would you look at this?
Yeah, today, as Mr. Bhaskaran rightly mentioned, this is some sort of a transitory measure. If the government were to come out with a formalized process, possibly we will get into a full formal virtual hearing. But today it's a process of ensuring that dispensation of justice is not held back, because it's important that the wheels of the economy move, and that's what so many things that have happened in the economy have to have the participation of judiciary. You can't allow the judiciary to come to a standstill, and therefore we have come to some measures being taken to ensure that this dispensation of justice is in no manner hampered. It's important for us to understand, therefore, that even if we were to go about tomorrow to make it a permanent process concern, we will not be required to have too many changes in terms of the rules. I was going through the income tax appellate tribunal rules, and if you look into those rules concerned, it's possible to adhere to and satisfy the most important rules in terms of the procedures laid down. For example, Rule 19 will say you should need to have a place of hearing being defined. Rule 20 will say the same thing. Rule 23 would say that the appellant shall be heard. Rule 24 would say that the appellant has to appear in person. Rule 33 would say that this is a real public hearing. All these are today possible to be satisfied in terms of a virtual hearing, because the place of action is moving out from the court, from the council side. The judges are coming into the courts now presently. So that part of the story, the procedure remains and the practice remains. It is the councils are coming out. But the question is, even the councils are coming out, are you in spirit in compliance with the ITAT rules, which therefore are the rules for the purpose of ensuring that justice is rendered? In my opinion, largely you are able to comply with it. You're possibly able to identify and point out certain technical glitches in terms of saying, hey, these are the rules that possibly may have to be made or modified to ensure that this becomes a permanent measure. I don't think a great change is required in the legal framework in terms of ensuring that a virtual hearing happens on a permanent basis tomorrow. Tomorrow, possible they could say that we'll give an option to have a virtual hearing or a personal hearing. But then the type of changes required to the law in ensuring that the compliance is happening in the way it's designed, I don't think there are not much of challenges in terms of ensuring that the compliance to the spirit of the rules is possible to be adhered to.
Okay, thank you, sir. So, on the same question, sir.
Answer.
Hello.
Yeah, Badri, we must also know directions are coming from the Supreme Court to hold hearings even by tribunals.
Yes,
We
sir,
all know
absolutely.
directions of the Supreme Court would constitute law in itself, and therefore it is certainly legal. I don't think the legality will be in question. There may be some formalization of the rules and other things which may be required. As the honorable member said, we all think it is temporary measure. It may last 6 months, it may last 3 months. Therefore, we are all adjusting to the system. Finally, if it were to be a permanent measure, certainly some enhancements will have to come so that the rights and obligations of the parties are well understood and they will adhere to those rights. They are legally enforceable. Non-compliance becomes a punishable offense, and all those things also would come on with a little higher force. At this point in time, it is a facilitation. We must look at it that is the ability to dispense with justice in the best possible way. After all, the judges still are assembling, as far as the Bangalore Tribunal is concerned, they are still assembling in the court and giving us a feeling that's the court. There could be many occasions when even that may not be possible. As the morning tribunal special bench hearing, you may not even get all the 3 people on the same frame. Still, you are still able to argue that kind of feeling. But I think we must look at it as it is not a legal challenge. Some procedures will have to be enhanced to ensure that the requisite compliance is adhered to in a better way than what it would be at this point in time. Today is based on SOPs. We can make it a little more tighter if required on a long-term basis. But since Supreme Court is directing, I think it will be construed as a law, and it's a requirement that you must conduct virtual hearings at this point in time.
Sir, before I take up questions which are there on the chat box, sir, one question to Mr. Shivdas and Mr. Padam. This one is basically, sir, for a lot of people who are going through challenges in terms of the virtual hearings, what are the 3 things that you advise we should take care of? From Mr. Shivdas first and then from Mr. Padam.
Badri, your question was not very audible. Can you just come back on the question once again? You said 3 things. 3 things of what?
Oh my God, I'm so sorry, sir. My question is more on, today there are so many challenges. It's a new thing that all of us are learning, unlearning a few things from a virtual hearing format. So to a lot of people who are appearing today, what are the 3 things that you would say that we should all take care of?
3 things for the persons appearing, not for the courts.
For the council.
Okay. There are 2-3 things we should be clear. One is, if we want a virtual hearing to happen, then we should try our best to be in a place where the connectivity is really good. That is something which we will have to ensure, because there is no point in being in a place and then trying to blame the system that connectivity doesn't happen and therefore what is to be done. So that's the first thing I think we'll have to ensure. In fact, the High Court is now coming out with certain specific centers where people can go in rural courts. They can go to a particular place. From there, the connectivity is better established and you can argue. So that's the first thing which anybody who wants to go in for a virtual hearing should be clear about. The second is, I think we should try to, as somebody was pointing out, and Bhaskar sir in fact was specifically pointing out, I think we are used to arguing for a longer period of time for different points, which maybe at some point of time we can concise and be very clear that this is all what the dispute is, and therefore this is all what you will have to decide. Maybe that is an habit which all of us have to cultivate. In fact, I was wanting to react to what PVS sir has said when he said that maybe there should be an exchange of notes, and then the points of difference should be narrowed down so that it is only on that point of difference we make our arguments to the court. That would, according to me, require a lot of maturity both from the petitioner side as well as from the department. See, in fact, I would suggest that it would require a greater maturity from the department side, because somewhere they should be in a position to say that these we accept and these we don't accept. Only on these 2 points we don't agree with you, and we also address our arguments on that. So that's something which we should cultivate. We should be ready to do that. And 3, I think we should, over a period of time, get into the system of looking at laptops, looking at soft copies and trying to argue. Because all of us, at least speaking for myself, I'm definitely not comfortable if I have to look at a laptop and argue. I should have my physical copy with me. I should be in a position to know which page, what it is. I make my notes. I scribble my notes on the entire left-hand side. So that's a habit which all of us have come to. So that is something which will have to make a change. So 3 things: be clear that you are in a better connectivity environment so that there is no problem. 2, the arguments have to be precise to the limited extent so that it gets conveyed to the judges. Of course, the judges over a period of time, in fact, are showing more patience in these times. At least when I have argued before the high courts, the judges find that if the connectivity is not proper, they don't take a decision. They adjourn the matter, they pass over the matter so that the connectivity comes back. And so it's a complete fair tribute to them that they are really taking a lot of time to understand. Only if both sides are available, both sides concur, they pass orders. Otherwise, they don't pass orders. I think we should be fair to the judges on that. And the third
Fantastic,
is,
sir.
yes, and third, we should try to get into a system of trying to learn to live with the technology so that we make use of it as we grow further.
Done. Sir, thank you so much for the 3 pieces of advice to everybody. Sir, Padam sir, what would your 3 things be, sir?
Somewhere, some sort of modification to what Mr. Shivdas mentioned, somewhere in different form, but spirit remains the same possibly. I thought the type of demands on a council are that they need to be better organized today, in the sense that I can't have surprises in the last way. Technology demands and the process demands that I put my cards in terms of all my material and case laws beforehand. I also will get that from the counterparty. Therefore, it demands that the council is better prepared. Therefore, it's important that I have my strategy well in place. I know that these are the ways I go about. Last minute preparations are going to be some sort of a thing of the past if the virtual hearings were to happen. Therefore, it demands that we are better organized on this matter. We need to therefore focus on being better organized. 2, it has to move from eloquence to effectiveness. We need to therefore ensure that how am I going to be more effective in a virtual hearing. So we'll have to, over a period of time, understand that these are the essential features of being effective in the process of arguing in a virtual court. We therefore have to look at not just eloquence, but look at the ways and means by which we become effective in terms of ensuring that not just I'm arguing, I'm able to convey the adequate point to a person who is not there physically present before me. And therefore, from a remote place, I need to ensure that what are the type of acts I should do, what are the type of learning I should have to ensure that my effectiveness in terms of conveying that particular point before a judge is improved. And as Shivdas was mentioning, the most important and undeniable fact is my technology adaptation. I'm only looking at the Moore's law, which says that the computer capability is doubling every 2 years, and the costs are becoming half every 2 years. Technology, therefore, is moving at a phenomenal pace. We possibly, as individuals who are now quite past our prime in terms of age, we don't know as to how technology is influencing thought processes concerned. Whether we like it or not, we will have to therefore look at improving this adaptation to technology, ensure that we are more relevant in terms of the knowledge that we have acquired is fine, but we will not be able to convey it properly and effectively if we are not adapting to technology. And the mental blockage in terms of looking at technology, I also have a lot of great mental blockage in terms of adapting to technology. But rightly or wrongly, if you can't adapt, you need to have a team that will help you adapt, team that will function for you, that you carry on with the way you want to function. But in terms of the translation of your argument before the court's concerned, it happens in a manner that the technology is used to the best possible and the maximum possible effect. These are the three things I will talk about in terms of the preparation for a virtual court.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. In fact, the very important thing is, which both of you mentioned, is the aspect of preparedness and the aspect of adaptability. You know, like they say, time and tide waits for none. If I don't adapt myself to technology today, then in no time I will be outdated. So yes, sir, there is one thing from my side that we should that I thought I wanted to share with everybody is, you know, keeping in line with what an open court is. You know, I think we should look at a mechanism where the link for the hearing is available to outsiders, is available to others also. You know, this comes from two things. One, which I think Mr. Shivdas mentioned at the beginning, where, you know, a lot of these youngsters learn so much by looking at senior counsels. You know, the mere presence of a counsel in a court adds to the confidence of that individual when they are standing in front of the court. Not to take more time, maybe I just want to share one of my experiences way back. I had a case before the SESTAT, which was in the context of, it was about works contract, it was about taxability, it was about input tax credits, etc. The same day, Mr. Ravi Shankar also had a case. Yes, when I saw the cause list, I did see Mr. Ravi Shankar is there. Yes, so it was nice that I will get a chance to hear him out. But when I was sitting there, I realized that it is the very same matter. It is a similar matter that he is there for which even I have. Just that for my good stars that day, his was say case number 7 or something, mine was some 17 or something. You know, all I had to tell the bench was, sir, whatever you applied for case number 7, please apply to me. You know, I think this opportunity, for a lot of youngsters will be lost in the virtual hearing. So my sincere submission is, sir, if I may request, I think the link that is made available by the tribunal or the courts should be allowed to be used by others also, just from a learning experience, because that is one very important thing for a lot of individuals. With that, sir, I think I'll close the questions from my side while I have more. I'll look at questions which are there on the chat box. Considering the point made by Mr. Bhaskaran, sir, only the counsels appearing for the case listed can appear. In such case, how can it be open? So for that, there is another person who's already replied saying, you know, in unprecedented situations, in terms of Kher Singh's case, AIR 1988, it is a deemed court. So very well, thank you. Thanks, Mukesh, for giving that. And there is one more question which says whether the adjournments will be reduced in the virtual hearings and hence pave way to faster administering of justice. Sir, I will only answer that. I don't think it is a matter of the court. It is more councils as Mr. Padam there, as Mr. Shiv mentioned, saying, you know, it happens how we prepare ourselves as councils to ensure that we take less time but be more lower courts are in the hearing. Only what is the
Badri, your voice is breaking.
of emergency, sir.
Your voice is breaking.
Mr. Bhaskaran for this.
I don't think you have heard. I don't think you have heard
what you said at all.
Sorry, sir.
Your question is not clear, Badri. Just repeat the question. Maybe a little shorter question so that technology is not disturbing us.
It has become a virtual question now. You don't understand the question now.
Sir, this is a question from Mr. Om Prakash. It's on the chat box. Sir, Shivdas, sir, if you can just take that.
What is the question?
Lower courts or high courts maintain that only emergent matters will be taken up. What is the meaning of emergent?
Oh, see, there, for example, we can adopt the principles which the High Court is now looking at. The High Court says emergent matter where anything connected to an evidence, anything connected to a family matter, anything connected to personal liberty, or any urgent problems because problems are there that are not been attended to. This is what they call as an urgent matters, or any recovery proceedings are there. These are all called as emergency matters, not normal repetitions or anything else. So that principles can always be adopted. Emergent matters means that if that matter is not being heard tomorrow or day after, there will be a problem. That is the understanding of emergent matters.
Okay, done, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I think the questions on the chat box are done, unless we have more. Shiva sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I think I'm a little jinxed because though I have 3 connections here, none seem to be in my favor today.
Okay.
Sir, may I request you to take it from here, sir, because I don't see any further questions in the chat box.
Okay. I think we have spent about 2 hours on this, so I would take the liberty of closing the session. On behalf of the BCIC and on my personal side, sir, I thank Mr. Bhaskar for taking his time off and to be with us to share his experience as from an ITAT perspective what is happening. Though of course the other tribunals are not, I am not too sure is implementing the virtual hearing in the manner in which ITAT is doing it. I am told that CESTAT is revising some notifications procedure. They are setting up the practice, though it is part of the same tax department. So there, I think the other tribunals have to really learn from ITAT as to how they can do it. Thanks for being present here, sir, and for giving your clarifications. Thanks always, as usual, to our own dear PVS for being with us and for being available whenever we want him. That is the best thing about PVS for us. In spite of the fact that he is extremely busy and people keep disturbing him at any time, all that we need is to give a phone call to him saying, we want you to be here, sir, and he is there. So thank you, sir, as usual. I will not specially thank you. My always gratefulness is always there to you. Thanks to Mr. Padam for taking his time off and being here for the session and giving his thoughts on this. And thanks, Badri. You struggle to have your connections on, but still I think you were able to keep the questions, complete all the questions. Great effort on your part. And thanks to all the participants. And I see it started at about 98 or 99. We still have about 50% of them left, still hearing us in spite of all the disturbance. Thanks to all the participants, and thanks to BCIC for hosting this. It should be a good learning process for all of us. Maybe down the line, after 6 months or 8 months, we'll really know where we stand on virtual hearings. Whether we'll really have it, we will not have it. It will be a combination of virtual hearings and physical hearings. We're not too sure. Maybe 8 months down the line, we can revisit this and see where we stand. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks so much.